The evening lights of Manhattan had just begun to flicker awake as the city shifted into its slower, softer heartbeat. At a corner bistro on West 54th, Alexander Ward, investment mogul, boardroom legend, and a man accustomed to silence being synonymous with power, sat at a table for one. His dinner, untouched for several minutes, grew cold while he scanned a report on his phone. That was when he heard it, a shaky, hesitant whisper. "Excuse me, sir." He looked up. Kneeling on the pavement was a young woman, barefoot, dress torn at the hem, blonde hair tied up in a messy knot that looked like it had been undone and redone too many times. Her arms were wrapped around a sleeping infant, swaddled in a thin blanket that had clearly lived a harder life than it deserved. Her eyes, blue, tired, and shimmering with humiliation, met his. "Could I, maybe, have your leftovers?" she asked. Alexander blinked, unsure whether he had heard her correctly. He was used to deal proposals, strategic asks, million-dollar negotiations, not fragile, heartbreaking pleading. "My leftovers?" he repeated. She nodded quickly as though afraid she'd lose her nerve. "I haven't eaten today. And my baby? She hasn't eaten enough either." Something inside him, a place he had trained to remain cold and untouched, shifted. He felt it like a crack forming along the surface of stone. "Stand up," he said softly. She shook her head. "It's okay. I can stay here." "No," he insisted gently. "Please stand." She rose slowly, as if expecting to be scolded for taking up space. "Sit," Alexander said, pointing to the chair across from him. Her lips parted in disbelief. "Sir, I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," he said. And for the first time in years, he meant it. The waiter's face twitched with confusion when Alexander requested another plate, another glass of water, and a bowl of warm soup for the infant. "Is everything all right, Mr. Ward?" the waiter asked. "Yes," Alexander answered firmly. "Everything is fine." When the food arrived, the young woman hesitated before touching anything. "You should eat," Alexander urged. She swallowed. "I didn't want charity." "Then don't think of it as charity," he replied. "Think of it as dinner with a stranger who cares." She finally took a small bite of bread, then another, and another quickly, instinctively, with the desperation of someone who had forgotten what fullness felt like. "What's your name?" he asked. "Elena." "And your daughter?" "Lily." She looked down at the sleeping baby with a softness that almost hurt to witness. "She's 3 months old." Alexander glanced at the infant, then back at the woman who held her with a mixture of fear and fierce devotion. "What happened, Elena?" She hesitated, not out of secrecy, but because she wasn't used to anyone caring enough to ask. "My husband died last year," she whispered. "Car accident. He worked construction. He was all we had. After he passed, I couldn't afford rent. Then I lost my job because I had no one to watch Lily. Everything happened too fast." Her voice wavered, but she continued. "I've been sleeping at the women's shelter, but they run out of beds sometimes. Today, we didn't get one." Alexander felt a heaviness settle in his chest. He should have been immune to stories of tragedy, after all. His world revolved around numbers, markets, and outcomes. But this wasn't data. This wasn't theory. This was a young mother holding her entire world in her tired arms. "And you came here," he said. "I saw you eating," she said quietly. "I thought maybe you wouldn't mind if I had what you didn't finish." He stared at her, utterly still. "You don't deserve leftovers," he said. "You deserve a life." Elena's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away, quickly, clearly practiced at pretending she was stronger than her heartbreak. "Thank you," she whispered, "just for letting me sit here." Alexander realized in that moment that his heart, which he had locked away years ago after losing his own wife, was still capable of feeling something more than ambition or drive. It could still ache. It could still care. It could still change. The check arrived, but Alexander didn't look at it. Instead, he looked at Elena. "Come with me," he said. Her entire body tensed. "Sir, I'm not that kind of woman." He froze, shocked she even thought that. "Elena," he said gently, "I meant I want to help you. Truly help you." She stared, unsure whether to believe him. "I'm not asking anything from you," he continued. "But I can't walk away knowing you and your Daughter will sleep on the streets tonight. You don't even know me, she whispered. He held her gaze. I know enough. She shook her head. People don't just help like that. No, he agreed quietly. They don't, not enough. A single tear slid down her cheek. Alexander stood up and extended his hand. For a moment, she didn't move. Then Lily shifted in her arms, the tiniest little sigh escaping. Her lips, and Elena looked down at her daughter. That was when it happened. A miracle. Not the kind that rearranges the world, but the kind that rearranges a heart. Elena placed her trembling hand in Alexander's. I trust you, she whispered, and deep inside him, something long forgotten flickered back to life. Alexander led Elena and Lily to the black town car waiting at the curb. His driver's brows lifted in surprise, but Alexander simply said, She's with me. Yes, sir. He took them not to his penthouse, not to a hotel, but to a small, safe apartment complex he owned, a place he used for corporate guests, furnished clean and secure. This is for you, he said as he opened the door. Elena froze again. Sir, no. I can't accept this. You can, he replied, and you will, at least for tonight. Let Lily sleep in a real bed. Her breath shook. Why are you doing this? He looked at her with honesty he hadn't allowed himself in years. Because once someone saved me too. He didn't elaborate, but she could see the truth in his eyes, the grief, the loneliness, the echoes of loss. Elena walked into the apartment. The moment she saw the crib in the corner, prepared in minutes by Alexander's staff, she crumpled. Quiet sobs shook her shoulders as she held Lily close. Alexander stepped back to give her privacy, but not distance. Not tonight. I'll send food, formula, clothes, he said softly from the doorway. Tomorrow we'll figure out more. A job, childcare, whatever you need. She looked up at him, tears still streaking her cheeks. You're an angel, she whispered. He shook his head. No, just a man trying to do something right. By the next morning, sunlight poured through the apartment windows, warm and full of promise. Lily slept peacefully, the kind of deep rest that only babies who feel safe ever know. Elena stood at the kitchen counter, holding a cup of tea Alexander had brought. You didn't have to come back, she said softly. I wanted to, he replied. She studied him, this powerful man who had sat alone the night before, unaware that the universe was about to place a small miracle in his path. What happens now? She asked. Alexander slipped his hands into his pockets, unsure how to explain what he felt. That depends, he said. What do you want? Elena gazed at her daughter. I want a life where she's safe, where she never has to beg, where she can grow without fear. He nodded slowly. Then let's build it. She blinked, stunned. Why? Why would you do that for us? He hesitated, then told the truth. Because when I looked into your eyes last night, I saw something I thought I'd lost forever. What? Hope. For the first time since her husband died, Elena smiled, a real smile, fragile but bright. And what about you? She asked gently. What do you want? Alexander looked at her, then at Lily, then back at her again. I want to not eat alone anymore, he said quietly. The three of them stood there, two broken adults and one innocent child, and something unspoken filled the room. A beginning, a possibility, a miracle small but powerful. Elena reached out, placed her hand over his and whispered, Then let's not. And for the first time in years, Alexander Ward felt like a man who had finally found the thing that money could never buy. A reason to live again.